My wife cheated on me during quarantine. Part 2. Update. In most cases, and in any other context, none of these things should or would have bothered me. But given recent events, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't get the images out of my head. I was both emotional and terrified. It was critical for me to separate myself and my finances from my SDBXW. She always gave me the impression that I couldn't manage my finances on my own, because she explicitly told me so and advised me to keep my paychecks in her account until we officially divorced. It was impossible for me. I needed to separate everything as soon as possible. As an adult and a highly functioning business professional, I am capable of managing my finances. Unfortunately, I am human and I make mistakes, and given the circumstances, I was more likely to do so. For my direct deposits, I entered the incorrect account number. They need a MICR number, which is like a digital barcode. I submitted my real account number, which resulted in the rejection of all of my funds. I'm now awaiting paper checks and my home payment is past due. It's early Monday, and I had a doctor's appointment for a completely unrelated reason, but I felt compelled to list depression as a secondary reason for my attendance. My doctor is fantastic. She paid attention to me. She was sympathetic and kind. She assisted me, but she was worried that I had pictures of self-harm flashing through my head. I'm not sure where these images came from or why they're suddenly appearing now. I don't believe there was any intent or desire behind these visions. They were just ideas that were in my mind's eye every time I closed my eyes or blinked. I would never injure myself. Life is never so awful for me that I would end my own life or harm myself or others I care about. I am certain of this, yet the visuals frightened me. They started with pictures of me driving my vehicle off a nearby dam because I had been driving. I decided to pay a visit to an old Little League baseball diamond where I grew up. I sat in the parking lot, trying to find out why I hadn't been paid. Every direct deposit I received was denied. They were 3 in number. I drove to my bank at 9 a.m., but they didn't open until 10 a.m. due to COVID. I had music playing in the background, and as I closed my eyes, the visions got more vivid. They progressed from driving my automobile off the dam road to stealing razor blades from my home drawer. In the spirit of a 1950s showroom song, the words "Up the tracks, not across the tracks" was playing in my thoughts. I had already determined what was wrong with my account, so there was no need for me to go to the bank. Yet I couldn't go home. I was unable to drive. Both pictures frightened me enough that I contacted my therapist's office and asked to talk with someone. God bless the young lady who answered the phone because she was unprepared for what was about to happen. I stated my desperate desire to speak with someone. She checked my record and told me that my therapist would be out of the office for the next week. I highlighted the significance of talking to someone once more. She advised that she cancel all of my sessions with my therapist and replace them with new ones. No way, that's not going to work. All I need to do is speak. She was at a loss for what to do. She messed about for a while, trying to figure out what she was doing. There was an uneasy pause before she hung up on me. In the moment, it seemed as though she had given up on me, but she had most likely simply made a mistake. When I phoned back, I got a new person. She, too, had no answer for me. I did request to talk with a management, but I'm pretty sure they're all working from home now, so getting a manager on the phone straight immediately wasn't an option. She said she'd have a management contact me. When I informed her about my photos, she seemed really worried, but she couldn't assist me. I waited in the parking lot for a little longer, unsure of what to do next. After a few minutes, I got a call from my therapist's office, and Morgan knew just what to do. She spoke to me. She wanted a therapist, but she was concerned. She made a decision. She inquired whether I was at home, and I responded no, but she had already phoned the police to check on my well-being. I told her I was on my way home and that I needed to be home by 11 a.m. to return my rental car to my wife. Sidebar on driving a rented vehicle. After discovering my wife's infidelity, my relatives begged me to return to Vegas so they could care for me. They advised me to bring my daughter. My wife requested that I bring my 2 kids with me. My vehicle broke down the day before I was supposed to go. I had 2 bad engine mounts, bad water pump, broken fuse box, and had spark plugs. I still needed to fly to Vegas, so I phoned my insurance company, USA, since I'm a veteran. The fellow, who was also a Marine, was quite helpful and informed me that my insurance would cover the rental for mechanical reasons. When I arrived in Vegas, I was informed that they would not pay the rental, despite the fact that I had previously paid $622, $200 deposit. Sidebar end, I began crying while driving since the girl was so lovely and listened to me. When I was telling my experience, I would break down in tears. She was on the phone the whole time. I informed her that I had returned home. I informed her that I had entered the home. My wife could hear portions of the chat since I was on speakerphone. I hung up after thanking her and softly cried with my head in my palm. My wife isn't a demon. What she did to me was horrifying, and she is well aware of it. But she is not a monster. She cared for me and felt empathy, sympathy, and love for me. She simply doesn't know how to express herself. She is constantly robotic, yet this is because of her own upbringing and life hardships. She could sense I wasn't feeling well and came up to me. She asked if I wanted to take her in my arms. I nodded affirmatively with my hands and avoided making eye contact. I didn't want her to be able to see my tears. I buried my face in her chest, held her back tightly, and bawled. She rubbed my back and told me to take a deep breath. I sobbed even more. I appreciate her willingness to comfort me, but it came across as robotic. It didn't fill the void left by my heart in my chest. It wasn't working. There was then a loud knock on the door. When she inquired what it was, I told her it was the police. She was perplexed. She questioned why they were there, and I explained that they were there to help me. She was concerned. She went to answer the door, and they explained why they were there in further detail. The two cops entered my bedroom. They were fantastic. The female cop doing the most of the talking immediately connected to my daughter in my narrative. Her father committed suicide while incarcerated. She spoke about the gap it has left in her heart. My cousin's leg tattoo was seen by the male officer. He served in the Marine Corps. He began speaking to me as if I were a Marine. It was beneficial, but they were diverted to another location, and the guy shook my hand and the lady embraced me. It was wonderful to know that they cared. But they were gone, and my robotic wife sat down at her computer as if nothing had occurred. I couldn't stay any longer. I repeated it to myself softly but loudly enough for my wife to hear. I won't be able to attend. I'm unable to attend. My wife did not pursue me once I got into my vehicle. I was devastated. When I went down the block, she phoned in but couldn't be reached. If you don't respond, I'm contacting the police to come get you, she texted. I didn't say anything. She phoned twice more, but I was unable to respond. She kept texting me but didn't get a response. All right, I'll phone them. 12:18 p.m. At 12:29 p.m., she phoned me again. They're going to contact you. 12:32 p.m. The female cop I talked with earlier contacted me 6 times between 12:32 and 12:36. I was unable to respond. She texted me as well. I was terrified of the visions in my thoughts, and I really wanted to be someplace secure. I arrived at the police station and parked in the lot. I put on some depressing music, opened Facebook, and read over 7 years of love and family progress. I watched as my family grew from just me and my daughter to a family of 3, then a family of 4, and eventually a family of 5. I adore my family, but I couldn't answer the phone. Another cop called repeatedly from a band number. I did respond, but I wasn't exactly transparent about what was going on. I ultimately got off the phone with him. I had to get away. Last August, my family and I went our first family trip across the Pacific Northwest into Vancouver, Canada. I went on the highway and attempted to go in that direction, but I couldn't. I turned around and began driving toward another city that meant a lot to my wife and me. It was impossible for me as well. I got a mental image of a Catholic church while driving. I'm not religious, but I knew there would be someone with whom I could speak. I needed to speak with someone who was not a friend, who wasn't related. I sat at a pew in this lovely church. I had a private time with myself. It was tranquil and comfortable. While I sat there, it calmed the pictures in my thoughts. I was able to breathe a bit easier. I eventually began to glance around and saw that no one was coming to check on me. It wasn't like what you see in movies. The wife texted and phoned me again. "I can't assist you until you speak to me." I went to the administration office and requested a priest or a confession booth. The sweet lady informed me that there was only one priest on duty today, and he was on his way to an emergency. She informed me that there will be 2 priests available tomorrow and asked if I wanted to schedule an appointment. I respectfully declined and proceeded to walk away. It was nearly 2:45 p.m., and I knew my wife had a dental appointment at 3:00 p.m. I got on the motorway and chose to proceed to the previously stated city. My family had been notified of my absence at this point, and they began calling and texting me, pleading with me to answer. I couldn't do it. I went into the slow lane because I couldn't drive any farther. My wife somehow drove right past me on the expressway on her way to her appointment. I wanted to be near her, so I followed her. I parked in the dental office's parking lot. I wanted to see how concerned she was. I wanted her to be as worried as I was the night I couldn't locate her while she was cheating. But it didn't seem right. I couldn't stand there in the parking lot, staring at her vehicle, so I drove back to the church. I sat in the same row again, and the priest appeared. He drew me into a room to discuss, and I told him my tale. My whole family is panicking at this point, but I needed to speak with this priest. Everything was shown to him. He was also an extremely caring person. He assured me that none of this was my fault, that I don't have to consider self-harm. Please pick up the phone or come speak to me. 4:24 p.m. How come you're ignoring me? 4:36 p.m. I'm nearing the conclusion of my tale with the priest, and he's giving me some great life advice when I glance down at my phone, which is resting on my lap. My wife texted me once more. "We need to return the rental. Is this what you're worried about now?" When the priest saw me sobbing, he said he couldn't let me go. He was ordered to contact the cops. We agreed that he may contact them. They arrived, and I told the 2 cops my tale. The one-man cop who was doing all of the chatting was likewise 29, like the female police earlier in the day. But this time he was able to connect with me. He too was a Marine, and he had gone through similar experiences to mine. I enlisted the help of these officers for a purpose. I eventually contacted my wife to let her know I was okay before they came. I informed her that I would be gone for a bit and that she needed to come pick up the rental. She grabbed a mutual friend's hand and stepped forward. She assured my whole family that I was okay. I sobbed when I saw her in the same vehicle as our buddy. I couldn't physically face her as she got out of the vehicle. I couldn't physically turn my chest to face her. I couldn't have her looking at me like way. Both our buddy and my wife waited in the parking lot, and the officers kept them from approaching me while I hid behind a pillar and sobbed. The deputy asked whether it was acceptable if my buddy approached me, and I nodded yes. I wept more as she got near. She grabbed my hand, and I burst into tears. She supported me, kissed me on the face, and let me cry. Her warmth, compassion, and care were palpable. My buddy approached me and asked if I wanted my wife to come over. More than anything, I wanted my wife to come over. I sacrificed everything to be a better person for her, and I really want her to be a part of my life. I wanted to undo all I'd done wrong, but I couldn't. It's all over. I indicated that I wanted her to come over, but I still found it difficult to face her. When I was in trouble, I felt like a kid who refuses to face their parent. The closer she went to me, and the more she attempted to stand in front of me, the more I sobbed and moved my body away. Stay tuned for the next part.